Hey guys, John Paulamy here, Actionable Intelligence. Today is Saturday, August 24th, 2019, and this is the weekly market update. So in this week's reality check, had an interesting thing I grabbed off Twitter from Chris Mayer. He had a great tweet where he quotes Scott Adams. Scott Adams, if you don't know, is the creator and creative mind behind the Dilbert cartoon series. He also wrote a book called How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. He also does a lot of discussions around sentiment and crowd psychology. He was one of the first people to predict the Trump presidency just from the sentiment and crowds. But anyways, what I thought was interesting was the quote that Chris grabbed out of the book. And I think it's pertinent to some of our discussions specific to psychology and the psychology of trading and operating in investing markets and in life in general. And I'd like to kind of read this. It says, when politicians tell lies, they know the press will call them out. They also know it doesn't matter. Politicians understand that reason will never have much of a role in voting decisions. A lie that makes a voter feel good is more effective than 100 rational agreements. That's even true when the voter knows the lie is a lie. If you're perplexed at how society can tolerate politicians who lie so blatantly, you're thinking of people as rational beings. That worldview is frustrating and limiting. People who study hypnosis start to view humans as moist machines that are simply responding to inputs with programmed outputs. No reasoning is involved beyond eliminating the most absurd options. Your reasoning can prevent you from voting for a total imbecile, but it won't stop you from supporting a half-wit with a great haircut. If your view of the world is that people use reason for their important decisions, you are setting yourself up for a life of frustration and confusion. You'll find yourself continually debating people and never winning except in your own mind. Few things are as destructive and limiting as a worldview that assumes people are mostly rational. And that's, one of the things that I have discovered in my journey in speculating and investing is that we are not rational. We are emotional creatures. We have biases. We allow these biases and emotions to creep into our thinkings. I'll give you an example. I know a person that completely, from 2008 at the bottom of the market, when it was 666 on the S&P, when people should have been buying, would not get back into the stock market, specifically because they didn't like Barack Obama. Considering the fact that all the money printing that went on, you just knew that there was going to be a V-shaped recovery. That's the time to buy. But all through, as the market kept making new highs, they kept saying, Barack Obama is a terrible person. He's, going to wreck the economy. I'm not going to invest. Can't you? And I don't really care if Barack Obama is a good person. How much influence does a president really have on the economy? I don't really care about these things, but I'm trying to show you the irrationality. When every central bank around the world was printing trillions of currency units and they had to go somewhere, you knew the market was going to go up. This person did not want to participate because their bias against Barack Obama, for whatever reason, didn't allow them to. So that's an example. You see the example every day in regular life. People's lives go along, and all of a sudden, their spouse or their significant other decides they're not happy anymore and they want a divorce, or they go off and have an affair, and then 10 years later everybody's moved on and the person's unhappy. People make all kinds of irrational decisions. I'm amazed when I'm walking down the street and I see people smoking cigarettes. It's like we have a wealth of information around the fact that what this can do to you health-wise, yet people continue to smoke. They continue to take it up. People are irrational. They just, they are. So what I think we need to do is, that's why I like listening to Charlie Munger He speaks a lot about this. He speaks a lot about how he has to constantly fight to purge irrationality and biases out of his thinking, and how that's made him successful. He calls it the mental model. And I'm kind of going to just paraphrase what he's saying, because we don't have time to get into, this could be a full lecture series. But basically, what's the mental model? You're comparing reality to what we think reality is in our mind. So, reality is a set of facts that's there. We may not like the facts, and that's when the problem starts. I don't want to get into too many examples, because some of them are going to cause people to freak out politically. But, reality is what reality is. It doesn't matter, what we think it is in our mind or what we want it to be. And we have the saying, want in one hand and shit in the other one, and see which one fills up first. It doesn't matter what you want to happen. It doesn't matter what you think is going to happen. It only matters what's happening, or what's going to happen based on the facts. So, we make stuff up in our mind because we are human and we do not know everything. We cannot know everything. That's why I'm constantly reading. That's why I'm constantly trying to take in information. That's why I'm trying to constantly consider other viewpoints. Why? Because, as Munger says, I want to take the best from the smartest people I can find, because, no one's smart enough to think it all up by themselves. You just can't do that. So the other thing you have to do is you have to consider other views and opinions, and you have to consider the facts for what they are, even if they go against your biases. Okay? And it's, I'll get into that later, a little bit later, when some facts that we're going to propose and how it's going to, possibly change the themes that we're investing in or speculating in. One of the takeaways is if you deviate from facts or assume you know something without understanding those facts, you will more than likely encounter less success with whatever endeavor you are pursuing. Have you ever seen people in your life? I don't know each individual that listens to this, but, you try to make correct choices, and you see people that you think, man, this guy always makes or this person always makes a lot of the right choices whenever they come up to us. They made the right career choice. They did the right things. Then you see other people that every decision they're given or decision point, they make the wrong choice. Well, then you see that the outcomes are different. It's not luck. It's not privilege. It's making correct choices. And, for the most part, I knew a kid, he started at McDonald's when he was 15 years old or 16, whenever you could start working. We made fun of him, the fry guy. The guy is an executive there now. He stayed there for 35 years. There's something to be said about that, okay? And, other people I know that, have bummed their way through life. They get alcohol and drug abuse, partying, happy-go-lucky, and, now they're 45, 50 years old and they're bumps. So it's about choices. It's about facts. It's how we look at reality and how we interact with reality. Ayn Rand, a lot of people don't like her, but this particular quote, I think, is pertinent to the conversation. It says, we can ignore reality, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. And these things are pertinent to, how we look at things. I fell into this trap before myself. I want, you buy a certain security, or you want something to happen to be a catalyst for the security or stock or whatever to go up, and it doesn't happen, and yet you hold on. So I think that, we have to look at the facts for what they are, even if they are counter to our biases or our prejudices or the way we think things should be. Because if you don't do that, it's really going to extract a cost to your results in whatever endeavor you decide to take on in life. There's a speech that Charlie Munger gave to Harvard in 1994. It's called The Psychology of Human Misjudgment. I'll put a link to it. It's very fascinating. I suggest you read it, because he goes through like 20 or 25, something like that, different types of biases or things, and he gives pretty good examples. And if nothing else, it's a very good read. It's very entertaining, but it also provokes some thinking, about, I'll give you an example. There was a guy he knew in Nebraska, or he knew of. It was a doctor that just took all these gallbladders. I was constantly taking people's gallbladders out and sending them down, and after 5 years, somebody finally in the pathology department said, like, there's nothing wrong with these gallbladders. Why does this guy keep taking them out? And then it was determined, after they suspended this guy and kicked him out of the hospital, that he had a view that all medical problems were attributable back to gallbladders. So he never met a gallbladder he didn't like. He had a bias against gallbladders, so he was just, anytime a patient came in with some ailment, he took their gallbladder out. And you think, well, this guy's a medical doctor, he should know better, but this is what I'm telling you about biases. The guy ended up losing his medical license and, not a doctor anymore. I mean, there's examples like that. So I think that, we really have to examine our biases, our prejudices. We really need to look at reality for what it is, even when it's uncomfortable for us. If we don't like it, it's too bad, especially when you're dealing with real money or real life decisions. So I just wanted to touch on that. I thought it was very pertinent. That's exactly what you see in politics. I mean, people, I'm kind of fascinated. They showed some people the other day. What piqued my interest was they were showing the Iowa State Fair. I don't know, I just caught a clip. And they had this family that said they had voted for Trump in 2016. And they said, we're not going to vote for him in 2020. And I was kind of curious. I said, well, why don't they want to vote for him? And then they said, well, they don't, the woman, the matriarch of the family, well, the guy didn't say anything. He was just standing in the background. I could tell he was going to vote for Trump again. You could just tell by the look on his face. But the mother and the daughter were like, well, we don't like the tone. We just don't like the tone. Well, that's great, but, why did you vote for the guy in the first place? The tone's no different. Are you for, tax cuts? Are you, for less immigration? Are you for, I'm not saying Trump's been successful, but this is what I'm trying to say is people vacillate back and forth between these extremes. George W. Bush won 2 terms, and then we swung all the way over to Barack Obama, who was one of the most liberal. Do these people have any anchoring anywhere? Not voting at all is probably what most people should do, just because of the fact that, it's just an advanced auction on stolen goods. But these people, emotions vacillate back and forth, or it's been proven that, well, I like the way that this person looks, or he's a good-looking guy, or whatever. These are some of the things that, people use to base these decisions on, and it's irrational. What's your psychological anchoring? What's your moral anchoring? What do you actually believe in? And then why you have to translate it to a vote. If you are a moral person, if you believe that, just like Scott Adams is talking about, these politicians all lie. Donald J. Trump is a liar. They all lie. Every single one of them lie. Okay, so you would not accept this in any other relationship in your life. If your spouse constantly lied to you and disappointed you, would you stay married to them? If you were in business with someone and they were constantly stealing from you and lying to you, and the turmoil that would precipitate, would you stay in business with them? But people, they're irrational. So, what is their, what is their philosophical anchor? Most people don't have one. They've never thought it out. They have a little bit of religion they learned when they were a kid at Sunday school, or they took a logic class in college, and then whatever their parents' influences, and it all turns into a mishmash of gruel that's tasteless and meaningless. And if that's the way that you're going to approach things in life, I would suggest to you that you're not going to be having a lot of success. You have to, what is it you believe in? What is your value system? What are the biases you have? You have to identify them and try to purge them. I have them. I have prejudices and biases, and I constantly have to fight with them, and I have to look at things for the way they are, not the way I want them to be. So that's the reality check for this week. It's kind of a little bit long-winded, but I think it's very important because people ignore this kind of thing, and to their detriment. Now, big news this week in uranium. There hasn't been a lot of big news. Obviously, people are getting frustrated. People are getting bored. People are becoming discouraged. But we have some news out of Kazatomprom that they're going to continue supply cuts. This is right off the Kazatomprom corporate website. Said they announced today their intention to continue to flex down production by 20% through 2021 compared to the planned levels under subsoil use contracts. The full implementation of this decision would remove up to 5,600 tons of uranium from anticipated global primary supply in 2021. Then it goes on to talk about their production will remain below 23,000 tons, which is expected to be in line with production in 19 and 20, where a 20% reduction of annual levels was reflected in previous reports. The CEO commented, "Delaying the return to planned output levels also demonstrates our commitment to the value over volume philosophy at the core of our strategy." So this is the thing that I suggested, when Kazatomprom decided to have their IPO and sell off some of their percentage of the company to the public, that, they were moving away. They have a new management, younger management, more dynamic management, Western trained in finance, and having an understanding that, the old Soviet way of just increasing production for the sake of increasing production to meet the 5-year plan is not a way to run a business, and especially in a low price uranium environment. So a lot of people didn't think or don't think that Kazatomprom, they still mistrust it. They look at it as being, like Boris Batinov, Russian influenced, which it is. But, the facts are what the facts are. I mean, they're now trying to maximize their assets. They want to have value. There's no reason to make huge investments to, supply uranium. I mean, they have a certain amount of maintenance capital they have to spend, or a certain amount of new capital to maintain and increase production, and they're not willing to do that at these low prices. So this gives them, that out also. Not only do they not have to spend additional capital, they can easily explain it by saying they're doing their part to curtail production in this low price environment and maximize value over volume. So I think this is more positive news. It fits into our philosophy of less supply, more demand. And, this is just reinforcing of that low prices cure low prices. So I thought that was some news. Most people have already heard it, but I think that, if you're not aware of this, it is kind of big news. I caught this Alex Molyneux interview with Smith Weekly. I thought it was excellent. Nice discussion about the current uranium market by Alex Molyneux. And I'm familiar with this guy. He used to run some companies in Mongolia. He also ran Paladin for a while. When they shut down the Langer Heinrich mine, he talks about that. What I thought was very pertinent to this conversation was the discussion around Cameco and really the problem that they have. They have about 12 million pounds of uranium they have to buy by the end of the year, and they haven't really been doing it because I think they thought the price was going to go down. I think they thought that they were driving the price. And the problem is that, and I'm going to have to take another look at this. This is what gets into the facts. We need to verify these facts and kind of take a look at them. But, the assertion was that, this is a loss-making enterprise now. They've got McArthur River shut down. The price is not high enough of uranium to bring it back online. They have these commitments they have to make, and they're losing cash. I mean, their cash flow, they're a loss-making machine, as he says. And this is going to continue for a while. They're kind of trapped. I mean, he juxtaposed this with the fact that when he was at Paladin, they were able to, get out of some contracts and limit the amount of damage. And I think Cameco now is in a situation where a lot of people look at them as being, the main company to go to in this space, and it looks like that might not be the case. That, depending on how uranium prices move over the future, and depending on how things play out, this could be a company that doesn't really necessarily benefit to the max in the uranium recovery that we're expecting. So I think it's an excellent interview. I'll put a link to it. I would suggest you listen to it. Very smart guy, and he has an interesting perspective. Definitely need to check on the facts, though, over at Cameco, doing more in-depth study, not just assume just because they're a big company that they're going to be, getting maximum benefit. So I thought that was an excellent interview. I'll put a link to it. Wanted to get into some other things. The Jerome Powell, is Jerome Powell enemy of the people now? Well, I don't know, based on Donald J. Trump's recent tweets after the Jackson Hole announcement, and this kind of segues into what I've been saying before. I mean, listen, I'm not a big fan of central bankers. I think they exist for one reason and one reason only. That's to create currency units, create inflation, bail out banks. I mean, this revolving door between academia, banking, and central banks. I mean, if you can't see that, then I can't help you. But I just wanted to say what his statement was at Jackson Hole when he came out was, our challenge now is to do what monetary policy can do to sustain the expansion. Well, I've got news for Mr. Powell. If you look down at the bottom here, the expansion is turning into a contraction. Manufacturing PMI in August 2019 fell below 50. Below 50, that's contraction, folks. That's not expansion. So, I think Trump is frustrated. A lot of people on Wall Street are frustrated. The Fed is always behind the curve on the upswing and the downswing. And, the only reason I'm talking about this is because we're going back to the zero bound. We're going to go to some unorthodox monetary methodologies over the next couple years. It's not going to happen in the next month or two, but markets look ahead. That's what I said before. If you think that, we're in contraction now in manufacturing. It's that simple, okay? And that's not just in the U.S., that's around the world. We are in a global contraction in manufacturing. I'm going to show that later. That's why all these central banks are cutting their rates. And that's why we're turning now the rhetoric with China and all these other countries. Currency wars are now happening. Competitive devaluations are going to happen. Lowering rates around the world is happening. And currency unit creation on a scale is going to be unbelievable. So that's why, you see what Trump said here. He said that my only question is, who is our bigger enemy, Jay Powell or Chairman, Xi? And, this is the President of the United States. He shouldn't be saying these things. I like some of the policies of the Trump administration, but I believe that China needs to be confronted. But, things are getting a little bit weird now. And here we have global manufacturing PMIs falling below 50 all over the world. And I'll show some charts. Below 50, as I said before, is contraction, not expansion. And here it is, U.S. manufacturing PMI dropped to 49.9 in August from 50.4 in the previous month. This is the first month of contraction in the manufacturing sector since September in 2009. How does Trump win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and these places, Wisconsin, that have heavy manufacturing if they're in contraction? I don't see it. So that's why I think the rhetoric is being increased. That's why the pressure on the Federal Reserve to cut rates is going to increase. That is why, we are seeing the gold price pop on, I thought this thing was overvalued in the last week when I was saying, and it is. I mean, we're a little bit extended here. Look at how far we are above the 50 and 200-day moving averages. This thing needs to pull back and do some resting. But instead, based on the rhetoric we're seeing, based on the fact that, when you see global PMIs collapsing below 50 in manufacturing, what do you think's going to happen? More monetary shenanigans, more monetary malfeasance. I mean, when you have a big hammer and the only thing you can do is cut rates and print money, or print currency units, that's what they're going to do. Gold is seeing that. Gold is telling you that. Here's the chart I was talking about. This is a composite. This is off Ed Yardeni's site. I'll put a link to it. You can go and look. But this is the Purchasing Manager Index for advanced economies, manufacturing, as you can see, well below in the advanced economies. That's your Western Europe, the United States, Canada, Australia, basically your OECD countries, Japan. You're well below now, and you have been for a while in manufacturing, below expansion. So you see that the non-manufacturing is still positive. It's actually turned up. But, manufacturing leads things. As manufacturing slows down, then the services behind it that support it are going to slow down. You can see that they track fairly consistent, okay? So you will see that manufacturing will turn up first, and then services and non-manufacturing follow. So I don't think that this is going to stay positive, and I think this is going to lead to more money printing. Here's your global purchasing managers index. This is not just the advanced economies. This is the global composite for manufacturing. You can see the global in red is in negative territory below 50, indicating contraction. Advanced economies below, obviously we showed that before, and emerging economies barely hanging above the contraction level. So I think, this is why we're seeing weakness in oil prices. This is why we're seeing weakness in various metal prices. And I think this just opens it up for a lot of money printing. And we've been here for a while. This isn't just like something that happened last month. So we need to track this. We need to pay attention to it because a lot of economies around the world are cutting rates. So I have found a site. I don't have it here. I'll put a link to it. But there's an interest rate tracker. You can see month by month what countries are cutting rates. A lot of countries are cutting rates now. And I've showed that before. Council of Foreign Relations shows it. There's another site that tracks it, tracks the news of central bank actions. And that's why gold is making new highs, folks, in just about every currency around the world. These competitive devaluations are going to happen. And, that's why the dollar, is hanging in there, or a lot of people are talking about the dollar moving higher. Jerome Powell sitting on his hands up there talking about transitory cuts. I mean, they're way behind the curve. And and they always are. And then Trump, is desperate now because manufacturing is now contracting. So he's, we've never seen a president be this interactive with the Fed, as you will, criticizing the Fed. So I think Powell's going to, they're going to have to cut. I think they're going to try to hold off as long as they can so they don't look like they're being manipulated and they're being controlled by the president. But in the end, it's going to happen. And I think gold prices are in a bull market. They have been for a while. We were talking about this for months ago. I was vacillating a little bit. I was like, is this thing going to go? What's going on? But now I think that it's without a doubt, we are going to see negative real rates. We talked about that last week, what real rates are. That's what drives the gold price. And when you get down at the zero bound and then get into negative territory, which I think we're going to end up in, and many other countries already are, there's really no opportunity cost to holding gold at that point. If you're getting negative returns from your government bonds, then that means you're basically paying the government to hold their securities. As gold pays no dividend and no interest, there's no opportunity cost at that point to holding it. So I think the rhetoric is being ratcheted up. I think the economy is rolling over based on these PMIs. These are the facts. They are not in dispute. We could see substantially lower oil prices, copper prices, but out of the ashes of this, we are going to see a tremendous amount of money printing, and we know what that means. So when I see the cover of Business Week saying inflation is dead, I'm not sure I believe that. They will create, I'm going to go on record, I've said this all along, they will do whatever's required. They will print any amount of money to stop a debt deflation. That's the worst thing that can happen for the masters of the universe. They would rather have inflation than deflation, as asset prices would collapse and you'd have a debt implosion. So I'm not saying we won't have a financial crisis right now. I'm not seeing the indicators I'm looking at around high yield debt rolling over yet. But what I am seeing is that we are looking at we may already be we're definitely in a manufacturing recession, and we'll have to see if the rest of the economy follows. Regardless, central banks are going to keep cutting, creating trillions and trillions and trillions of currency units. This is good for gold and commodities. So just want to leave you with this chart again. Pretty decent move there on Friday. Like I said, I think gold's extended. It's way above, like I said, its moving averages, but it probably needs to pull back. But that's what I said last week. And then we had this, this is what can happen in these gold bull markets. There's no fever like gold fever, and people are still not really into this. And I think, with the algos and things like that, you can see big moves. And I think that, like I said, we're in the beginning innings of a long bull market in gold stocks. So that's it for this week, guys. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you tuning in. Channel continues to grow. Like I said before, if you want to support me, please subscribe. Please hit the like button. Please comment. I like to interact with you guys in the comments, and make them respectful. I don't like turds and people coming in here and ankle biting or drive-by bomb throwing. I mean, if you have legitimate discussion is accepted. Discord is, I like that too. I like to mix it up, but let's keep some a little bit of decorum. So that's it for this week, guys. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks.